let's do a very quick economics of why it can't last. When you protect the American economy from the Chinese, whether you use the electric vehicles or you use solar panels or you use advanced AI equipment and so on, it's always the same story. You protect it here by excluding the Chinese. Well, what does that mean? It means that where the Chinese have broken into the American market, it is because they produce either a better quality or offer a lower price or both. That's all. That's it. There's no magic. No one's holding a gun to anybody's head. That's how and why, the toaster you have at home is made in China, and on and on and on, because that's a cheaper, better toaster than anybody else makes, which is why Walmart has it for sale, or Target, or any of the others. So now let's follow the economics. If you exclude that, you make Americans buy poorer quality or pay a higher price. That's not good. That's bad. That's bad for the consumer, but no one really cares about them except in words. Let's turn next to American businesses, or for that matter, to any businesses operating here in America. They have to buy inputs, raw materials, machines, parts, whatever it is. And where are they going to buy them from? They're not going to get the good, cheap ones from abroad because the government of the United States has put a tariff. That's the point of the tariff. So the American business will not be able to buy as its raw material or its parts or its inputs. It will not be able to buy from China because we're in this competition, which means it can't get the cheapest or the best quality. But of course, the competitors of the United States, located in Canada or Mexico or anywhere else in the world, are able to go to China and are able to buy at the lower price the better quality. So over time, America is shooting itself in the foot competitively. It's losing, and not by the hand of anybody else, but by its own. It is following a policy that may be good for the posturing of Mr. Trump. I am bringing industry back. No, you aren't. The industries aren't coming, and they're not coming because of what I just said, that in the long run, it makes no sense to come back here because you'll have to not be able to buy the cheapest input or the highest quality. Why would you move to a country which promises you competitive disadvantages? That's why American companies went abroad in the first place, because it was more profitable. You are giving them a reason not to come back. Why this is so difficult, I assume, is not because the idea is complex. It isn't. But because of the noise from the Trump administration, but sadly not contradicted by the vast majority of Democrats and their spokespersons. So it is allowed to give this man, Trump, the posture opportunity as if he was doing good for the American economy. He isn't. It may be bad in any case. I'm not blaming him for it. But what he's doing is really nonsensical self-promotion and making the problem worse.
Well, only one technical question, Richard. How can you shoot yourself in the foot if you first shot yourself in the brain? It doesn't work that way.
I mean, this is not There are things in economics that are complicated. This isn't one of them. This is not that. It's really sad. It's almost as if we had a person who was president who said, I'm going to solve our economic problems. I'm going to erect a 6-foot tall tower, and I'm going to hang yellow streamers, and I'm going to have an enormous amount of whipped cream put on top. And we would listen to such a person, and we would all shake our heads. How demented, how sad for him to imagine that a real problem, the declining American economic system, could be managed by this fantasy. Well, I gotta tell you, with all my fancy economic degrees, I'm looking at a program that's ridiculous.
I wonder how this will affect the negotiations between the United States and Europe right now, because European companies also not only wanted to export cars to the United States, as did South Africa that has heavy tariffs, but Trump is pressing them to set up American production plants, as many German car companies have done. But if they set up an auto production plant in America, how can they make a profit given what we've just discussed about their increased costs? This action and the tariff policy by Trump is essentially splitting the American economy and off from the rest of the world and isolating it, as we've discussed before.
Yeah. And if you look, Nima's choice of that clip is a very, very smart, right? To have the Ford family, which is really the family out of which the American car industry grew, right? Henry Ford, way back when, at the beginning of the 20th century, creates the assembly line and makes it possible to mass produce this odd thing, a self-driving automobile instead of a horse and a carriage. Okay, so here you have the latest generation, a young man who you would expect, if he were like Trump, would be beating the drum of nationalism, is answering an honest question by saying, you know, we don't produce the best cars. We don't have the best technology. We can't compete. I mean, after you listen to him describe what the Chinese car on the average can do, I know enough, and I don't know anything, but I know enough about American cars. They can't do that. They can't do those things. And they're more expensive. And we are completely lost on the electric vehicle market. I mean, wow. From the mouth of Mr. Ford, you know what that suggests to me as an observer? That the car industry in this country is finished. Cars, whatever their role in the world economy in the years ahead, are going to be made much better elsewhere. Maybe the image of the United States is we're so important, even though we are, let me remind everyone, 4.5% of the world's people live in the United States. 4.5%. We're going to have an economy all by ourselves? You know what that means? We're going to be the oddity that now you can see on television when a camera crew goes deep into the Amazonian jungle or deep somewhere else and discovers a community that has been living, you know, the same way for 5,000 years. We're going to be one of those. The rest of the world is going to send tourists here. That'll be our new economic boom, the tourism, to look at these ancient automobiles these people still have. You know, I'm not being facetious. That's where we're going with this policy.
Well, so much for the materialist approach to foreign policy, thinking that nations are going to act in their own self-interest.
Yeah. Well, you know, what your self-interest in has never been uniformly or universally agreed. So the sentence never, if you think about it, it's a Hegel again. takes you in all the different directions.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
also,
I think
the tragedy of Europe is somehow even more poignant for me than the American. And I should, to be transparent, I was born and lived all my life in the United States, but my parents were refugees. They came from Europe, and so I straddle in the sense that my parents are European and I'm an American, and I have children and they're American and all that. But Europe was once the center of the known world because it did the knowing and it was the center. So it was the center of what it knew. And, it carved up the whole world. I remember once studying the meetings in Berlin in 1884, where all the European countries had a big map of Africa and made lines with markers. You get this, I get that, having nothing to do with the billion people that lived in Africa at the time. Extraordinary, really extraordinary, and it's all gone. It's all gone. They can't unify, so they don't even have the power that a unified unit might have. So they don't even have that. They're pinched by the Chinese and Russians on one end, by the Americans on the other, and the third world has declared anti-colonialism is Israel and Gaza stand out as the final desperate attempt to hold on to the colonial idea and project, and look at the price being paid, the lesson to the world. If you ever wanted an example of why you should get rid of colonialism, here, So the Europeans, they face nothing but defeat after defeat after defeat. And they deny it and they pretend otherwise. When the Queen of England dies and a new king, they actually act as if anybody cared, as if the world would be interested in the cortege that takes the Queen to her final resting place. This is a theater piece for ancient times, held on to by people who have nothing else. The catastrophe here is real. And I understand the danger. Societies traumatized by anything can behave in a horrible way. The German working class, as I've tried to write recently, was traumatized. It was led to believe in the 19th century that it was going to inherit the world, that the British Empire was fading and Deutsche Reich, the German Empire, would replace it. And they were led to believe it. And German economic development in the 19th century was like America. Those were the two up-and-coming contenders to replace the British Empire. And then in a very short time, the German working class was destroyed by being defeated in World War I. 5 years later, they had the worst inflation in modern history, wiped out their savings. And 4 years after that, the Great Depression of 1929 hit. In a short period, they were traumatized by 3 totally destructive events. No wonder they went for Adolf Hitler. That's what happens if you traumatize. Look what happened to people in Cambodia after the United States bombed them forever. They went to Pol Pot, and what was that? You traumatize a population. Too many defeats, too many declines, too much absence of any change, and you can get very bizarre activity. And part of the bizarreness of the Trump government is that